Why do all these stories about cheating wives sound so trite? It's all the same. Came home early, found an email, caught her with her lover at the office Christmas party, happened to drive by the motel and saw her car parked outside the room. There must be other ways in which a cuckold husband finds out about his wife's infidelity, at least you would think so. But maybe not. Maybe there are only half a dozen ways in which a man comes to the realization that his marriage has simply collapsed. I know that in my case, I was so in love with my wife of 10 years that it took a lightning strike for me to realize what had been going on between my wife and her lover for the past 6 months. I had no idea. Shannon and I met in our sophomore year of college, and we were immediately attracted to each other. She had gorgeous blonde hair and blue eyes, a beautiful face and a slender body with long legs. In short, she was perfect, at least to me. But for all that there was about her, I fell in love with her at first sight. She was smart, humble, and fun. I could talk to her for hours about anything in the world. We became best friends, and after 3 months of being together with Shannon, we opened up in new ways, if you know what I mean. At that point, it was the highlight of my life. It was awkward and awkward. From that moment on, I no longer doubted that Shannon and I would be together forever, or as it turned out, for 10 years. My name is Stuart Gray, but everyone calls me Stu. I was born and raised in a medium-sized town in the Midwest. My height is 6 feet, and my weight is 187. I am considered to be a rather good-looking man with brown eyes and sandy hair. I am a contractor by profession. I have my own small company with a permanent staff of 5 people. We do mostly interior remodeling for those who can afford it, and our work is considered excellent. Shannon teaches music at a local high school, and together we make a very good living, have a beautiful home, and since we are both in our 30s, we plan to start a family in the very near future. Like I said, the first 10 years of our marriage were wonderful. We cuddled every night. It was an unbreakable rule, and every morning when I woke up next to Shannon, I marveled at how beautiful she was and how lucky I was to have her as my wife. I can honestly say that while I would rather live every day with her, if I had to give my life for her, I would do so without hesitation. I probably should have made that last statement in the past tense, as something so unexpected and emotionally overwhelming happened to me unexpectedly that to this day, I can't say I have fully recovered from it. As a contractor in the Midwest, most of our work is in the spring, summer, and fall. People just don't like the interior of their homes being torn apart when it's 5 degrees outside, and there's 3 feet of snow on the ground. So Shannon and I's vacations usually fell during Christmas and New Year's break, as well as spring break. In the summer, when I was busy making money, Shannon would sometimes take a week off to visit relatives, go shopping with her 2 sisters, or take a couple of summer courses to support her teaching degree. Every winter, we loved to go somewhere warm, and in the winter of our passing, we chose an all-inclusive resort in the Bahamas. 2 weeks in paradise for the 2 of us to reconnect in body and spirit. However, I soon discovered how misguided that thought was. First of all, I should explain that before Shannon and I boarded the plane in Minneapolis, not only did I not know, but I would have called you a liar and spit in your face if you had dared to hint that there was anything wrong with our marriage. We were the perfect couple, so madly in love and deeply connected in every way that it felt like we were 2 people fused in 2 bodies. Our union was so strong that nothing in heaven or earth could come between us. I seem to have forgotten that there is also a hell, and though I did not know it at the time, I was standing on the edge of the abyss, ready to fall into the molten abyss. The first time I felt something was wrong was when I was going through security at the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. The line was long, a lot of people trying to change from extreme cold to tropical heat, and as Shannon and I waited our turn to go through the scanners, I noticed that the man in line next to us looked at Shannon. It wasn't unusual. My wife is a flamboyant woman, and men often cast slightly lustful glances at her, but this looked different, like he was trying to get her attention. I wanted to know more, so I pretended to look at my boarding pass while I watched the guy with the edge of my eye. His glances in her direction were furtive, to say the least, and then I caught it. A quick glance from Shannon to him, and a barely perceptible wave of her hand, as if she was saying, "Not now." He smiled, nodded, and I almost lost my breakfast. I was stunned. It was then I realized that these 2 knew each other. How well, I didn't know, but that knowledge served as a red flag. As we passed through security, I watched them closely, and neither of them made any further attempt to make contact. I know I had become very quiet, but somehow Shannon didn't notice it. Apparently her thoughts were preoccupied with something else. I had hoped that this man, whoever he was not on our plane. But as we boarded and took our seats, I saw that I was wrong. He was sitting in an aisle seat about 15 rows in front of us. Another thing that struck me as odd was that Shannon decided she wanted an aisle seat in our row. That never happens. She always wants to sit by the window, but not this time. I asked her what was the matter since I had reserved a window seat for her in advance, giving myself a middle seat. But she just said she didn't enjoy her breakfast and didn't want to bother anyone if she needed to use the restroom. I asked the woman sitting in the aisle seat if she would mind taking the window seat, and when I explained that my wife had stomach problems, she readily agreed and the exchange was made. I don't usually have trouble sleeping on an airplane, and the long flight between Minneapolis and Miami would have given me the opportunity to do so. But in my heightened state of anxiety, there was no way I was going to fall asleep on this flight, even though I was going to pretend to be asleep. We put our bags in the overhead garbage can and Shannon put her purse under the seat in front of her. Once we were in the air, I pulled out my twin's baseball cap, pulled it over my forehead, and pretended to fall asleep. I left myself enough room to keep an eye on Shannon, and after 15 minutes, she looked up at me and, after making sure I was asleep, got up and headed down the aisle toward the restrooms. I moved to my seat so I could see the full length of the aisle and noticed that as she passed the seat occupied by what I now assumed was her acquaintance, she reached out as if wanting to hold on and lightly touch the guy's shoulder. Further proof that there was something between them and it wasn't all coincidental. And then I noted that they didn't look at each other and Shannon headed for the restroom. When she came out a few minutes later, she looked right at him and he stood up and walked over to her. When they met in the aisle, instead of one of them turning aside so the other could pass, they found themselves face to face and stopped for a moment. He put his hand on her waist and she spoke to him. They both smiled warmly, and she continued on to her aisle seat. That was all it took for me to realize that these two had known each other for some time and were obviously close on some level. At the same time, the realization that my wonderful marriage was in jeopardy and could very well end came down on me like a ton of bricks. I was suddenly so irritated that I had to turn away from Shannon as she sat down and buckled her seatbelt. How could she do this to me? To us? How long had this been going on? Who was this person and how far had their relationship gone? For the rest of the flight, I tried to make sense of everything I had seen and prayed that when we boarded our flight to Nassau, he wouldn't be on it, but somehow I knew he would be. To my horror, I turned out to be right. As soon as Shannon and I boarded the plane, I saw him sitting 5 rows behind us. He was reading the in-flight magazine and paid no attention to us as we took our seats. Shannon, who was obviously no longer plagued by stomach problems, took her usual seat by the window. The flight to Nassau went without incident, and after landing, we picked up our luggage, rented a car, and headed to the resort. While I was driving, Shannon texted, "Who are you texting with?" "Just to my mom and sisters to let them know we made it." Yeah, maybe, I thought, but I'd like to see for myself. Isn't it strange when suspicions start to snowball? Our room was lovely, with a balcony overlooking the ocean and one of the pools. As we unpacked, I realized I had to make a statement to get my wife back, so I walked over to Shannon and said, "Do you realize how much I love you?" "I love you too, baby," she replied. And then there was a strange light in her eyes like she wasn't in the room with me. "You know I would never do anything bad for you, don't you, Shannon?" She flinched slightly. "I know that, Stu." "And I know you'd never do anything bad for me in our wonderful marriage," I told her. And she flinched again, and I could see moisture running down her eyes. "Of course, Stu, you know I won't." But she didn't look at me. She just stared at the floor. I realized then that I had probably lost the battle. If she didn't already know, I knew now that she was going to give herself to another man. I let her go and quickly went to the bathroom, hoping I wouldn't lose her before I got there. I sat in the bathroom for a few minutes, coming to my senses and asking myself the same questions over and over again. How did this happen? What had I done to bring her into the arms of another man? Why hadn't I noticed anything a few weeks or months ago? But most importantly, what can I do to stop her from completely ruining us, or is it too late? I washed my face and walked out of the bathroom. Shannon was standing there with a strange look on her face. "Oh my God, Stu, I just got my period and I didn't bring anything with me." "What?" I said. "My period, Stu. It just started." "Never." "But you had them a week ago. How could they start again?" "I don't know. But it happens sometimes. Maybe the excitement over the vacation led to it. I need to go down to the gift store and get some tampons. And she left, closing the door behind her. My first thought was that maybe this was a good thing. It would slow down the romance between her and her boyfriend, whoever he was. My second thought was, wait, this just doesn't make sense. This has never happened to her in all the years we've been together. She's been on birth control pills and her periods have always come regularly, like clockwork. Then why would she make it up, unless she thought her period would stop me from pursuing her, so she could devote all her love and passion to a new man? That's the way it should be. And if it is, she's not the woman I married. No one can be so conniving and cruel. She must really hate me since she let me plan and pay for this trip to cut me out of her life and give everything she has to a man I've never even met. I felt completely lost, like I was going crazy. Who was this woman I had loved with all my heart for over a decade? As I looked around the room, I saw that she had left her cell phone next to the television. I turned it on, not knowing if she had changed the passcode, and found that she hadn't. Another mistake on her part. I went into her messages and read the latest message from one Anthony Eisner. I scrolled back to the beginning of the thread, which started when we were riding in the car to the resort. Anthony. Hey babe, I can't wait to have you as our guest. Shannon. You little brat, you almost got us caught by Stu at the airport. Anthony. I couldn't help myself, Shannon. I almost kissed you on the airplane when we were standing in the aisle. Stu was sound asleep, so you could have, but it might have looked bad to others. I have to go now. We are almost there. The conversation between the two resumed once we were in our room at the resort. Anthony. I'm in the lobby. Are you here yet? Shannon. In my room. Stu is in the bathroom. He's acting weird. Anthony. Who cares? When are you going to dump Stu so I can leave you alone? I told you from the first time we were together that I can't and won't do it, Tony. Stu is a wonderful husband. He loves me, takes care of me, and gives me a life that you could never provide. Anthony. But you know what I'm better at. Shannon. Ha ha ha, yeah, you're better at that, but I need more than that and Stu gives me that. Stu and I are getting ready to start a family, so the next 2 weeks are just for you, baby. I told Stu that I would stop taking birth control pills when we got home, but I actually stopped taking them almost 3 weeks ago. So now you have a chance to give me your baby, which Stu will raise thinking it's his baby. Anthony. You're so mean, Shan, but I love it. But what if he gets you pregnant? Shannon. I'll tell him that I got my period again and oddly enough, it'll be coming the whole time we're on vacation. Anthony. Are you sure he'll buy that? Shannon. Of course I'm sure. He loves me and he knows I would never lie to him. Besides, when we get home, I'll make it up to him. Anthony. Damn, he's so stupid. What a loser. I stood there in complete shock, started to change her phone and stopped. There is a possibility that I will find a way to use these messages as evidence in the divorce. I started to change her phone to my own and then thought, screw her. My phone has all my personal information on it. She made this mess on her own. Let her try to find a way out of it, so I kept both of our phones. I figured she wouldn't immediately realize her phone was missing, but by then I'd be long gone. I could feel the bile rising in my throat, causing me to gag. I walked over to the window and looked out at the beautiful Caribbean Sea. 8 hours ago, I was the happiest man on earth preparing for 2 weeks of romance, under the tropical sun with the love of my life, my wife, my soulmate, and now my world was crumbling around me. Never in my life had I felt so alone, depressed, and angry. I wanted to hurt them both, to destroy them for making me look like such a pathetic fool. Thankfully, the rational side of my brain slowly took over. Divorce was the right decision. There was no way I would stay with the cheating wife who was my loving wife. But not only that, I wanted revenge. Looking out the window, I happened to look toward the pool and there they were, arms tightly wrapped around each other. I wanted to throw up, but instead I took a deep breath and grabbed my VCR, which I had bought specifically for this trip, but was now using it to record their actions. Apparently, while Shannon was unpacking, she hadn't bothered to look out the window of our room, or she would have noticed the pool in plain sight. The camera had a decent zoom, so I was able to get some good close-ups. I didn't feel bad looking at her, but I would use that against them later. I needed a plan, and fast, but my stomach was cramping and my brain was blocked. Then it occurred to me how she was going to spend time with her lover if I was around. They must have a plan to keep me occupied while the two of them are together. As I thought about it, a simple thought occurred to me. Shannon wanted to spend 2 weeks with her lover Anthony to get pregnant, and I wanted to get back at her. So why not do it now instead of waiting and ruining their plans? First, I had to figure out a way for them to keep me occupied while they had fun with each other. I was still taking notes when I saw them kissing one more time, and then Shannon quickly turned and left. She would be back in our room any minute, and I needed to get my emotions under control. So I went back into the bathroom and started the shower to try and relax. If she asked why, I would just say that it would help me relax after the flight and get rid of the airplane smell. And then 5 minutes later, I heard the door to our room open and close. "I'm back," she exclaimed. "I brought us some water." "Great. I'll be out of the shower in a minute." Why did she bring us water? At the resort, all the rooms have bottled water. And then it hit me. She was going to pump me full of sleeping pills, and that would be the end of it. I started thinking about what I was going to do. If I don't drink the water she bought me, she'll realize I might suspect something. If I drink the water and it turns out to be the same, I will leave, and she and her lover will go back to her room. What to do? I turned off the shower and slowly wiped myself off, pondering what to do. At that moment, Shannon knocked on the door. "Are you okay? You've been in there a while." Her voice was full of concern. I couldn't help but wonder if she was worried about me or worried that she might be late for an important date. My anger started to rise again, but I fought for composure when I opened the door and saw her standing by the bed drinking from a water bottle. She held out the second one to me, and I noticed it was already open. "We need to drink water with this climate change." She looked me in the eye and quickly looked away. I took the bottle and pretended to take a big sip, then turned and walked back to the bathroom. Quickly but quietly, I spit the water into the sink and emptied the bottle. Grabbing one of the water bottles from the bathroom counter, I filled the empty bottle Shannon had given me. When I got back to the room, she was busy unpacking, putting things away in drawers and hanging clothes in the closet, so I was sure she hadn't seen me splash the water or fill the bottle. After getting out of the bathroom, I continued to drink the water. I started looking around our room and noticed that she had laid out a red dress. "Is that what you plan on wearing to dinner? If we can't fit into it, it will be unnecessary. You know how much I love that dress." Saying that, I realized she was dressing for him, not me. "Well, I brought it, so I might as well wear it." She smiled. "Aren't you tired after traveling so much? You must be exhausted." Bingo, I thought. This bitch really had me exhausted. But how was I going to portray it? I needed more proof of their affair, so I pretended I wanted to sleep. I took another sip of water and lowered my eyes as if I was tired. In reality, I felt like I'd just drank several cans of Red Bull. My heart was pounding in my chest, and it took all my self-control to pretend to be sleepy. "Now that you mention it, I'm a little tired. What time should we be ready for dinner?" I asked a little lazily. "They don't start dinner until a couple hours later. Why don't you lie down and rest for a while? I'll wake you up when it's time to get ready." She said it with such sincerity that I almost believed her. I yawned. "Okay, sweetie, I could use the rest. Just don't let me sleep too long. I want to spend as much time with you as possible. I love you so much." I saw her flinch, as if I'd hit some nerve. "I love you too." She said it with less conviction. I laid down on the bed and very slowly started pretending to fall asleep. Soon I was snoring quietly, and I heard Shannon pull out her phone to make a call. "Hey, it worked. He's passed out. How long is he going to sleep?" "Then we'll have a whole night together." She giggled, and I almost gagged, but managed to maintain the illusion that I was asleep. "Meet me in an hour at the Sandpiper bar. I want to freshen up a bit." She giggled again. "You're so bad. I can't wait, lover. Bye." She hung up and continued to get ready for her big night. I stared at her, barely opening my eyes. What a slut. Anger was building up inside me again, but I tried my best not to show it. She continued to get ready, then went into the bathroom and started to shower. I knew she would be in there for about 10 minutes, so as soon as I heard the shower door close, I quickly got up and walked over to her purse. I started looking in it for sleeping pills or whatever she had put in the water bottle she had given me. I came across a pill bottle that had no label indicating what was in it. I opened it and found a dozen or so small, whitish capsules. This must be what she'd put in my water, so I carefully shook out about 5 pills and put the pill bottle back in my purse. I then took the Kleenex, wrapped the pills, and put them in the pocket of the shorts I was wearing. Quickly walking over to the bed, I heard her turn off the water in the shower. I laid down as I was and continued to doze off while she finished getting ready for her date. It took her another 45 minutes to get ready, but as soon as she was out the door, I was already up and dressed as fast as I could. As I lay there, I had time to develop a plan. 1. I needed to get more video evidence of them being together. 2. Ruin their plans for the rest of the trip. I wasn't sure how I would manage that, but I knew they would both be in dire straits. The third was to return home a few days earlier than our trip was supposed to end and start divorce proceedings. I wanted to be done with Shannon before she could do anything to stop or slow me down, like emptying our bank accounts and canceling all of our credit cards. No, that was supposed to be me doing that, not her. As soon as I got dressed, I grabbed the video camera I'd used that day and headed out the door. It could work in low light, at least that's what the advertisement claimed. I was to find out as I walked to the bar. The resort wasn't very big and there were only 2 bars, both facing the ocean, but Sandpiper was the larger of the 2 and had a dance floor. I managed to find a strategic spot behind some low palm trees that gave me a full view of the bar, but was far enough away from it that I couldn't be seen. Thanks to the zoom lens on my camera, I got a very good video. The bar wasn't too crowded, which made it easy for me to spot my victim. She was wearing that damn red dress that I used to love, but now it made me angry and hateful. He wrapped his arms around her, and it took all my self-control and willpower not to run up to the bastard and destroy him. I had to remind myself that I was here to get evidence, not to end up in jail. I started recording the 2 of them acting like 2 lovers in the Caribbean. They laughed and kissed like lovers, like Shannon and me. After about an hour, the DJ turned on the music and they started dancing. After watching them dance together on the dance floor for another hour, I couldn't take it anymore and was about to go back to our room, my room, alone. Just then, I noticed the 2 of them walking quickly off the dance floor. I moved cautiously after them, keeping my distance so as not to be seen. Soon they reached his room, which was in the back of the resort. It was smaller than ours and was on the 2nd floor with no ocean view. This guy must be on a tight budget, I thought. They entered his room, and I quickly moved closer to get a peek inside. Luckily, the curtains weren't completely closed and the window was slightly ajar, so I could hear their conversation and record everything they said. I was videotaping everything, absolutely everything. It was nearing midnight and I was starting to think she was going to leave him to be with me, but then I heard them talking. "Are you sure those pills are safe?" she asked with some concern in her voice. "How touching." "Don't worry about him, baby. He'll sleep for at least another 6 hours. He may wake up with a slight headache, but nothing more than that. You only used 1 pill, right?" "Yes, just 1. "Why? What would 2 have done? I don't want him to feel bad." Bastard laughed. No, don't worry. If you gave him 2, he'd pass out for 12 hours or more. No, just keep giving him 1 before bed, and we can spend every night together. I want you to be pregnant by the time we leave. Here's another key card to my room. If you manage to get away from him during the day, call me, and we'll meet back here." Then they both laughed, and it filled me with such rage that I threw up. I had heard and seen enough for one night, so I quietly left and went back to my room. Now I had to plan how to destroy them both and make them feel the pain they had caused me. It was clear that she was going to try to spend every night with him, so the first thing I was going to do was change those plans. Back in my room, I went over everything I had written down. As hard as it was to look at, I began to put together a plan that I hoped would completely ruin their fun. First, I had to figure out how to separate them so I could spy on the boy in love and find out what he was up to. I decided to take him alone, maybe even give them water like Shannon did to me, and then beat the shit out of him while he was unconscious. He wouldn't be able to identify his attacker, and that way I could walk away scot-free. Now the question became how to separate the 2 of them. That's when I came up with the idea of giving Shannon a spa day. The resort had a spa that offered massages, facials, and even makeup. It would be easy to buy a package deal and give it to her as a gift to show her how much I loved her. If she tried to refuse, I would tell her the money was non-refundable and load her up with a huge guilt trip to get her to go like she had done with me in the past. There's no way she could not accept my gift, and it would keep her busy for at least a couple hours. I'll have plenty of time to spank my lover the way he deserves. I changed into shorts and went back to bed. As I lay there sleepless, all I could think about was the 2 of them and how I was going to kick that bastard's ass. It was about 5 in the morning when Shannon finally came back into the room. She quietly changed her clothes and then climbed into bed and snuggled up against me. I felt like pushing her away again, but I remained still, as if I were asleep, and waited for the right moment to wake up. A little after 7 in the morning, I started to move and slowly pretend to wake up. Shannon was sound asleep, so I got up, took a quick shower, and then went in search of the spa. I was hoping they would open early so I could get a package for her that would keep her occupied for a while, and I would have time to do some errands. Besides, I wanted to see if I could fly home the next morning or early afternoon. It didn't take me long to find the spa, and seeing that it was open, I went inside to see what they were offering as package deals. There was a pleasant young woman behind the counter who helped me choose a package deal. I was more interested in how long the treatments would take rather than the cost. After choosing a package that lasted about 3 hours, I asked what was the earliest time she could book it for. The woman checked her computer and said the first available time would be 2 p.m. I thought for a while and then decided to grab the package and surprise my wife. Once done with that, I went to check out the grounds, deciding that Shannon needed some sleep since the previous night spent with her lover must have exhausted her. Around 9 in the morning, I returned to the room and found her still sound asleep, so I rummaged through her purse and found her cell phone. I checked her text messages and read one he had sent in the last hour. Anthony, you were great last night. Any chance of getting away from Stu to have some fun during the day? My anger was coming back, but I held it back. I was good at it, but now I knew the end was near. Shannon hissed, and I hung up the phone and kissed her forehead gently. Good morning, sleepyhead. I'm sorry about last night for falling asleep like that and ruining our dinner plans, but I have a surprise for you. She smiled and yawned. What kind of surprise? I booked you a spa day to apologize for last night and to show you how much I love you. Even in my drowsy state, I saw her flinch slightly, and there was uncertainty in her eyes. At that moment, I realized that she was doubting if she really loved me. I looked into her eyes. Is everything okay? You don't like my gift? Oh no, I love it. I just wish you had asked me first. She smiled weakly. If I had asked, it wouldn't have been much of a surprise. Look, it's not like you have to run to the spa right now. I made a reservation for 2 p.m. so we can spend time together, okay? She nodded. You're very thoughtful, thank you. When she kissed my cheek, I thought I could smell sailors in her breath. What a lying little slut. Said them. Well, why don't you get cleaned up and we'll go to breakfast? I got out of bed as she sat up. Then she got out of bed, grabbed her purse and went to the bathroom. And then I knew what she was up to, but I didn't want to make her suspicious, so I went to look out the window and saw a curious sight. Anthony was sitting by the pool chatting with a couple of young women and looking at his phone. Then I saw him typing and suddenly put his phone away. She must have told him about my unexpected gift, but he didn't seem too upset about it. His attention soon returned to the two women, and they seemed to be laughing merrily at something one of them said. He then made a gesture with his hand, and all three disappeared from sight. It occurred to me that perhaps Anthony was making contingency plans in case Shannon couldn't make it in for some afternoon fun. This could prove to be very useful. About an hour later, Shannon and I were standing at the buffet table filling our plates. More specifically, I was filling my plate, and she was filling hers with fruit and coffee. Not hungry, babe? Are you on your period? I asked. Yeah, I guess so. I don't feel like eating at all. She turned away. I couldn't help but wonder what Anthony had written in his message because it seemed to bother her. It didn't matter, though, because my plan seemed to have the desired effect on them, or at least on her. After breakfast, we decided to take a walk on the beach and look at the ocean. I took my camera with me and took pictures of the beach, the palm trees, and Shannon. She smiled politely as I talked about how beautiful she was and what a great mom she was going to be. Then she would flinch, uncertainty and guilt appearing on her face. What's wrong, baby? Are you okay? I knew she was starting to get gnawed by guilt. No, I'm fine, just a little tired. Do you mind if I go back to the room and take a nap before hitting the spa? Sure, no problem. I know it's no fun being on vacation and having your period at the same time. Lie down, and I'll be waiting for you in your room after your spa treatments. I'm sure it will do you good. She turned and walked back to the spa without even kissing me goodbye. Oh well, I'd be blowing her off for a long time to come. All that was left was to find Anthony and make him pay. As I continued walking down the beach immersed in my thoughts, I saw two couples walking toward me. In the women, I recognized the ones I had talked to this morning with Anthony. Now they were with two huge guys who looked like they could have been Viking defenders. As I got closer, I heard them talking. Come on, baby, don't be like that. You knew Dave and I wanted to go fishing, and they had 2 spots available. We'll be back before dinner. So, sure, it's just you guys can go and do whatever you want while we're stuck here at the hotel. Babe, there's plenty to do here. Go shopping in town, hang out by the pool or on the beach. Heck, you can even use the gym that's here. Are you saying I'm fat? You should be talking. No, baby, I didn't mean it that way. It's just that you can do a lot of things here, that's all. I realized he was losing his mind as they passed me on the way back to the resort. But he persisted, but to no avail. After wandering around the beach for a while, I decided to go back and try to figure out what the guy in love was up to. I feared that Shannon hadn't gone to the spa and was with him, but if that was the case, I could get some more shots of them together. I wandered around the spa for over an hour and then found myself outside Anthony's room. There were voices coming from inside, but not Shannon's voice. I carefully prepped my camera and moved closer to the window. It was very risky because it was daytime and there could be a lot of people walking by who could see me. I decided it would be best to set the camera on the ledge of the window overlooking the room and leave it to record by itself. With the camera set up, I walked down the walkway and found a spot from where I could watch the door and see who was coming out. Time stretched slowly, but my patience were rewarded. The 2 women I had seen with Anthony in the morning at the pool and then on the beach with those 2 guys came out of his room. They smiled and giggled as if they knew some inside joke. As soon as they were out of sight, I grabbed my camera and headed back to the room. Shannon wouldn't be back from her spa treatments until an hour later, so I had time to go over what I had recorded. As soon as I got back to the room, I pulled out my laptop and loaded up all the videos I had recorded since we arrived. Most of it was dedicated to Shannon, but then I reviewed what I had just recorded of the 2 girls being in his room. It looked like they had found something to do while their boyfriends went deep-sea fishing. Anthony convinced them to do a double team with him. And then another idea hit me. If I calculated it right, I'd go home and Shannon would stay here trying to figure out what the hell had happened. I knew she'd probably try to beat me up again tonight, so I'd repeat the performance and let her think I was knocked out. Then, with any luck, she'd meet Anthony at the bar, dance, have a drink, and go back to her room. If I managed to slip 1 pill each into their drinks at the very end of the night at the bar, they'd be passed out by the time they got to his room. The timing had to be perfect, but in life you rarely get to plan perfectly. The second part of the plan was to record Anthony's latest conquests on the VCR. I have to say I was a little jealous of the bastard in that he was able to convince 2 very beautiful women. I had several discs for the VCR, and I made 2 copies of his day's exploits. Now all that was left was to figure out which rooms to leave them in. I also made a copy of everything I'd recorded up to that point on another VCR to back me up. I went down to the front desk and was able to send the disc home to my brother Frank with a note asking him not to play it or let anyone know that I had sent it to him. This was in case my plan failed or Shannon and Anthony found out what I was up to and wanted to harm me. If I was destroyed, at least the disc I sent to my brother would show the authorities who was behind it. Checking the time, I saw that Shannon was due to finish work at the spa soon, so I decided to take a walk around the resort to find out what rooms the 2 women and their boyfriends were staying in. I'm sure their boyfriends would be interested to know what they were doing while deep-sea fishing. I soon saw the 2 women I was looking for move away from the pool, both holding towels. As I followed them, I realized they were heading to their rooms, and sure enough, I saw that they had gone into separate rooms next to each other. This saved me from one part of my plan. Now, if everything coincided and Shannon and Anthony followed the same pattern as the night before, I could completely screw up the rest of the trip by tomorrow morning. I went back to the room to call the airline to find out when the earliest flight for the next morning would be. The most I was able to find out was 10 a.m., which was later than I had hoped, but I booked my ticket anyway. I then went back to the front desk and informed them that my wife and I had to leave the next morning for family reasons and that we would be leaving at 8 a.m. They sympathized with me and wished me the best. I thanked them and went back to my room. I was now firmly committed to my plan no matter what. If things didn't go as I hoped, I would still get on the plane in the morning and be home before Shannon. At least I'd have time to ruin her mood before I got back. But if by some miracle everything went according to plan, she'd be stuck here for days, maybe weeks before she got home, and that would give me time to really ruin her mood. The plan was pretty simple. First, Let Shannon think her water plan worked and pretend to fall asleep so she and Anthony could spend the evening together. Second, I'll go back to the bar, observe them again, and wait for the opportune moment to slip what Shannon was trying to use against me into their drinks. If I time it right, they should pass out right before they get to his room, or as soon as they're in it. Again, the timing should be perfect. Third, once they're in the room, I'll go in there, move Shannon back to our room, and then go back and take everything Anthony had from him. I started taking off his wallet, cash, passport, credit cards, clothes, everything he had taken with him on the trip. Then I found the rooms of the two women Anthony had met that day and slipped the DVR discs under their door, hoping one of their boyfriends would see them first and play them back. I'm sure they wouldn't be too happy to see what their girlfriends were up to while they were out. Anthony's room number is clearly labeled on the video, so I'm sure they'll have no trouble finding it. Fifth, do to Shannon what I did to Anthony. Take everything she took with her on the trip and leave her with only the clothes on her back and her purse. In her empty purse, I'll leave a little note so she knows who's to blame. So everything was ready, and now all I had to do was wait for the players to go about their business. Shannon returned to the room at 5:30 p.m., looking more relaxed and radiant than ever before. It pained me to think that she had ruined our marriage and that I would never be with this beautiful woman again. Stu, thank you so much for the spa day. It was amazing. I feel like a brand new woman. She was really glowing. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. When I first told you about it, you didn't show much enthusiasm, but I'm so glad you liked it. I just wanted to show you how much I love you. I saw her flinch again and tears flowed from her eyes. Thank you again. I loved it, and I love you. This time she said it with much more conviction and feeling. Anytime, babe. We have dinner reservations for 7 tonight. Let's get some rest and then we'll get ready for dinner. She nodded and went into the bathroom, bringing her purse with her. A few minutes later, she came out with 2 bottles of water and held one out to me. Here, drink this. I want to go to the dance tonight, so you better start moisturizing your skin now. She winked at me. Okay, just let me go to the bathroom first. I giggled. Once inside, I did the same procedure as before. I emptied the bottle, then filled it with water from one of the ones on the counter. I flushed the toilet to give the appearance that it was time for me to go and returned to the bedroom. I continued to drink the water, and after 15 minutes, I started pretending to be asleep. Soon I was snoring while pretending to be asleep and watching Shannon start to get ready for her last date with Anthony, even though she didn't realize it. She walked into the bathroom and started to take a shower. I quickly got out of bed and grabbed her phone to see what her lover had texted her. Shannon, can't get out this afternoon. Stu bought me a spa package. Can't say no to that. I have other plans for today. Do we have other plans for today? Oh yeah. After reading that shit, I wasn't as pissed off anymore since I knew the end was near. Now all I had to do was follow them to the bar, watch them dance for a few hours, and then slip them a drink. Easy. Well, maybe not so easy. I rummaged through my purse and found Anthony's room keycard. I slipped it into my pocket and put everything back where it belonged. Shannon took a little more time to gather her thoughts, and then she did something completely unexpected. She lowered herself onto the bed next to me and gently touched my cheek. Baby, after this week, I'm going to be all yours. I swear I just need to get this out of my head before we start a family. I wish I could tell you that you'd understand me, but I have to do this. These few days are for me. I wish I could tell you, but I know you'll leave me and I need you right now more than you know. I love you very much, but I really need to do this. I really do love you a lot, Stu. At first I thought she had guessed I was awake, but then I realized she was trying to ease her guilt, but it was a little late. Soon she was already dressed and out the door. As soon as the door closed, I was already out of bed, dressed and keeping up with her. They ended up going to the same bar again as last night. It was more crowded than the night before, and I even saw 2 women and their beach boys. If my plan worked, they wouldn't be together until the next morning. I settled into the same spot as the night before, made myself as comfortable as possible, and, armed with my trusty camera, began recording the events of the evening. The evening went as I had envisioned, and soon they were sitting around the table just talking and laughing. It was getting late, and I realized that the time was approaching when I would need to get them drinks. I quickly headed towards the bar, making sure none of them could see me. Once there, I found an empty seat next to where the waitresses were setting the table and taking drink orders. Taking a seat, I ordered a beer, keeping my eyes on the two of them to make sure they didn't notice me. As I watched them, I noticed a waitress stopping by their table to take their drink orders. After receiving their orders, she immediately went back to the bar and told the bartender what she needed. I was lucky that it was her only order. I listened to what she told the bartender, and then, when he went to fulfill the order, I called another bartender and ordered the exact same drinks. The first bartender put the drinks on the waitress's tray, but got distracted by a conversation with another waitress. The drinks were brought to me, I paid for them, then took one shot glass and, holding it away from the edge of the bar, broke open one of the capsules and added it to the drink, stirring the powder to mix. It fizzed a little, but it looked fine after mixing with the drink. I did the same with the second capsule and was ready to transition. Taking a glass in each hand, I began to squeeze past the waitress, managing to switch between her and the bar. I was fast, and luckily there were enough people at the bar that no one noticed me doing it. I passed the waitress and turned to take the drinks to the happy couple. I just as quickly left the bar and returned to my spot outside to watch and wait. The waitress brought the drinks and I watched, hoping I had picked the right moment. It was a little after 1 a.m., so if things worked out the way I expected, they'd be partying until 11 a.m. or so. That fit in perfectly with the rest of the plan. All that was left to do was finish their drinks and get back to Anthony's room before they passed out. They sat there sipping their drinks and I started to get nervous. What if they didn't finish their drinks? Anthony leaned over and said something to Shannon. She smiled, and they both quickly finished what was left and left the bar. Thank God. I quickly moved after them as they seemed to be in a hurry to get back to the room. This time I noticed that Shannon had started to stumble and seemed to be having trouble walking. Anthony took her hand and put his arm around her neck and supported her. When they got to his room, Anthony started to stagger a little too. By the time they got to the door, she was barely on her feet and he was getting more and more wobbly. He fumbled for the key card, and after a few feeble attempts, he was able to open the door and staggered into the room. The door closed, I waited a few minutes, then retrieved the key card I had taken from Shannon's purse and unlocked the door. As I entered the room, I heard Anthony's voice. "What's wrong with you, babe? You haven't had that much to drink." He was speaking slurred, and I realized that he was going to be hungover very soon. As I entered the room, I saw Shannon lying face down on the bed, unconscious. Anthony was shaking her, trying to wake her up. "Come on, baby, time to get down to business." He looked over and saw me coming in. "Hey, who are you?" He started to straighten up and almost fell over. "I'm just her husband, asshole. Why don't you be a good boy and pass out so I can get her out of here?" As if on cue, he slowly collapsed to the floor and didn't move. Moving closer to the bed, I started looking for his cell phone, which was on the floor next to him. Taking it in my hands, I wanted to see what he had on there in the form of messages and pictures. Soon I was flipping through hundreds of pictures, most of which were quite innocent, but then I discovered that he hadn't paid. He had a folder with dozens of women's photos. Most of them I didn't recognize, but I did find a few shots of Shannon. As I continued to look through the pictures, I recognized some of them as female teachers at the same school Shannon taught at, as well as the wives of several male teachers. Well, this is interesting. Anthony didn't seem to mind playing with other men's wives. This was going to end very ugly. I went through his contact list and decided that these photos, in addition to those of my soon-to-be ex-wife, should be available to all the people on his list. It took me a few minutes to tag and send all those photos to all those people, which included the husbands of the wives he had photographed. When he got home, he was in for an unpleasant surprise. I sent the pictures and videos to Shannon on her phone, and then from her phone to mine. I later used them for my own purposes. Blackmail, you might say? After disconnecting his phone, I started gathering all of his belongings, clothes, toiletries, and other items that he had taken with him on the trip and just carelessly stuffed them into his suitcase. I also went through his pockets and took all of his cash, wallet, credit cards, driver's license, and passport. I knew it would be very difficult for him to leave the island without his passport. After finishing filling his suitcase, I turned my attention to Shannon. She was still lying face down on the bed with one leg over the edge. I very carefully rolled her over onto her back, then picked her up in my arms and carried her to my room. There, I put her on our bed and went back to the asshole's room to get all of his stuff. I kept his phone, wallet, and cash, as I felt I should get some sort of compensation for them. After looking around his room, I made sure he had nothing to take with him. I even took the shoes he was wearing. And on the way to the room, I found a dumpster at the resort and threw his suitcase and shoes in there, covering them with trash so they wouldn't be discovered. When I got back to the room, I started packing my suitcase as well as Shannon's, whose things I treated with the same care as Anthony's. I was only going to leave her clothes in it, her purse, and an empty wallet that contained only the note I had left. As I finished packing, I noticed that it was 4 in the morning and I needed to be at the airport by 9. Since Shannon had finished drinking around 2 in the morning, she would be unconscious until at least noon. Anthony, I suspected, would arrive sometime around 10 in the morning, and I'd be able to leave before either of them woke up. There was one more thing to do. Leaving the room, I grabbed the 2 DVR discs I had created earlier and headed straight for the rooms where the 2 women and their boyfriends were staying. Very quietly and quickly, I slid the disc under the door of each of them and then went back to my room. There I looked at a peacefully sleeping Shannon lying on the bed, and I was overcome with a feeling of immense loss and sadness. I wanted so badly to start a family with her, but she had other plans and I couldn't forgive her. Going around the room, I made sure I had packed everything. Then I picked up Shannon's suitcase and went back to the same dumpster where I had thrown Anthony's suitcase and her Vipers. Back in the room, I went through Shannon's purse to make sure it was emptied and there was no money, credit cards, or passport in it. I wanted to make sure it would be as difficult for her to get home as it was for Anthony. Taking a seat on one of the 2 chairs in the room, I sank tiredly to the floor but immediately thought about what I would do next once I was home. First, I will empty our bank accounts and pay off and then cancel all of our credit cards. Then I would pack up all of my possessions and move them out of our home. I was sure I would have to find a storage unit to house it all, but I didn't care. I just wanted out. Out of our house and out of this sham marriage. Before I knew it, I was dozing off, and when I woke up, it was almost 7 in the morning. I got up from the chair I was sleeping in, walked over to the bed, looked at Shannon, and then gently lifted her into my arms and carried her out of the room. I walked down to the pool and left Shannon on one of the lounge chairs. Since I was checking out, I didn't want her there when they came to clean the room and get it ready for the next guests. Back in the room, I grabbed my bags and looked around one last time to make sure I had everything before I left. I still had Anthony's phone, but then an idea hit me. I walked back to the pool and picked up Shannon's phone. I started sending out all these pictures and videos to everyone on her contact list, with a few exceptions. She had a few nieces and nephews who were too young to see these things, but I was sure her mother, father, sisters, and coworkers would find them interesting. I walked up to the front desk and asked for a piece of duct tape. I took the battery out of her phone, put a very small piece of duct tape over the contacts, and then put the battery back in place. It would look like the battery was dead. I also made sure she didn't have a cord to charge her phone. Without money, it would take her quite a while to get the phone to work. No. It was about 8 in the morning when I heard yelling and screaming. It was the boyfriend of one of the 2 women I'd seen Anthony with yesterday. Apparently, their ex-boyfriends had seen the video I slipped under their door. "You're a slut. You can tell your family that the wedding is off and I don't want to see you anymore. You can find your own way home, bitch." One guy was yelling at his girlfriend. The other guy just stared at him with a stony expression while his girlfriend pleaded with him. "Baby, please don't leave me. I said I'm sorry. It was a very stupid mistake and besides, you got back at him." She cried. "You're a whore. Go back to your new boyfriend. But I don't think things will get any better from here." He said it so coldly that I shuddered in fear. I wonder what they did to poor old Anthony. I guess I'll never know. The next sound I heard was the siren of an ambulance stopping in front of the house. As I realized, the superintendent came out of his office and quickly led the paramedics down the walkway to Anthony's room. I really hoped he was okay. As people began to gather around to see what had caused such a commotion, I calmly caught a cab and headed to the airport. Turning on my phone, I noticed that I had a voicemail message. Calling up the voicemail, I listened to my brother Frank's message. "Stu, what the hell is going on over there? I have a bunch of pictures of Shannon. What's going on? Do you know about this? Call me when you get this message." When I got to the airport and was waiting to board the plane, I called him back and explained the whole situation, how Shannon was having fun with Anthony while we were on vacation and how she was trying to get pregnant by him. My brother was shocked and at first thought I was joking, but then I asked him to watch the video more closely. He said he was very sorry for what happened and that if I needed anything, I should call him. I thanked him, hung up, and soon found myself flying home alone. Turning on Anthony's phone immediately after landing, I found a dozen voicemails and over 30 texts threatening to do him bodily harm. Apparently, the pictures and videos I'd sent weren't popular. After picking up my stuff, I took my car out of the long-term parking lot and drove home. As I drove home, I began to plan what to do next. Divorce was one option, but I knew she would get half of everything and that didn't suit me. She cheats and still gets it in the divorce. It didn't seem fair. As I drove, another plan began to form in my head, and I started to mentally make a list of what I would need and how to do it. She had ruined our marriage and I was going to make her life a living hell. When I got home, I called my brother and asked if he could help me move things out of the house over the next few days. I wanted to finish everything before Shannon got back so she could come home to an empty house. I finally turned on my phone and found over 20 voicemails and over a dozen texts. Many were from Shannon's sister asking me what was going on and why Shannon wasn't returning her calls. Some were from other members of Shannon's family asking basically the same questions. I was pleased that there were no voicemails or texts from Shannon herself. That meant her phone was turned off, and she probably hadn't yet realized what had happened. I smiled as I imagined her finally getting it working, and then seeing all the text and voice messages asking about the photos and videos she had sent from her phone. She was in for a very unpleasant surprise. The first thing I did was cancel all of our credit cards and transfer all of the money from our joint bank account to my personal account. Then, I started packing up all of my clothes and other personal items I wanted to keep. All the gifts that Shannon had brought me over the years I would send in the trash unless they were worth something. Then, I would either sell them online or look for a pawn shop. My home phone was disconnected as soon as I got home, so anyone trying to contact me had to call my cell phone. It was around 11 p.m. when I finally looked at my phone and saw several messages and voicemails from Shannon. It looked like she had managed to get her phone working again. The first few messages were, "Where are you? Why did you leave and leave me here? Are you okay? I think I've been robbed." Then the tone of the messages changed when it got to her what had happened, and I'm sure she received many messages and voicemails about the photos that were sent out from her phone to everyone in her contact list. Why? Why did you do this to me? Couldn't we have talked first? I just ignored the rest of her messages, figuring it would only upset her more. The next day was very stressful. I had no idea when Shannon would be able to get home, so I had to act fast. First, I went to the store to pack up the rest of my belongings and rent a large enough storage unit. Then I went to the bank and made sure there wasn't much money left in our joint account. I transferred the rest of the money to my business account, which I was going to close, take the money, and run away, but I still had some work to do before I could leave for good. The house we lived in was very small. We decided to start small, and when our family grew, we would buy a bigger house. It was a simple 2-bedroom with 2 bedrooms, a small bathroom, and a small kitchen. Nothing special, and I had a home remodeling business and we were really hoping to turn this house into something special. Now I had other plans for it, and I was thrashing around town gathering everything I needed to make Shannon's arrival at this house one she would never forget. Since I was in the renovation business, I knew a thing or two about construction, load-bearing walls, and so on. Armed with this knowledge, I was about to embark on an extreme remodeling of our home, just not in the traditional way. Later that morning, my brother Frank showed up with his pickup truck, and after discussing my situation, we started loading his truck with all my stuff. It took over 5 hours and 3 trips to the storage unit, but by the evening of that day, I was officially moved in. I didn't bother telling Frank about my plans for the house or what surprise Shannon had in store for me. I knew he would try to talk me out of it, so I never told him about it. However, he did ask what my plans were for the near future, just to get out of town and put this nightmare marriage behind me. I'm not going to file for divorce, but I won't be here when she comes back. She can have the house as far as I'm concerned, but that's all she'll get from me. Frank just shook his head. You know that won't work. She'll just hire a lawyer and track you down. Just get it over with and divorce that cheating bitch. If you try to run, it will only make things worse when she catches up with you. I understand that you are angry and hurt, but don't let your emotions make your decisions for you. Pull yourself together, get a lawyer, and give her half. No, that bitch cheated on me and tried to have a baby with that asshole, and then she's going to pass it off as mine. She doesn't deserve anything, and that's exactly what she's going to get. See, I'm not going to divorce her. Oh no, I'll just leave her with no money in the bank and with all her dirty laundry in plain sight. Frank knew it was useless to try to change my mind. I'm stubborn, and there's little that can change my mind when I'm in this state. He left, but not before telling me to think it over and not to do anything rash. I had thought it over, from the moment I saw her kissing her lover. Now it was time to put my plan into action. And in the evening, I set to work on the house and labored until morning. I still didn't know when Shannon would be back, so I had to work fast. One thing that played in my favor was the snow. It looked like another big storm was coming, causing several major airports to be closed. Flights back and forth would be canceled, and I would have more time to put the finishing touches on the remodeling project. Another positive side of this storm is the extra 8 to 12 inches of snow it brought. There was still a foot-thick layer of snow on the ground and roofs, and that would help my plan come to fruition. Since I had only been back for 2 days, I rarely answered the phone as I saw that most of the calls were from Shannon. I finally decided to take her call, but only to get some information out of her, nothing more. Baby, please hear me out. It was a mistake, just a huge, stupid mistake on my part. I didn't mean for things to go this far. I'll do whatever it takes, but please forgive me. I could hear her crying, but it had no effect on me. I wanted nothing more to do with her, but at this point I needed to act calm, to give her some hope and snatch her out of my arms at the right moment. Shannon, you've hurt me as deeply as no one has ever hurt me. I don't know if I can forgive you or trust you again. I just want to know why. Why did you do this to me? To us? Don't you love me? Am I not enough for you? I spoke calmly, but with a hint of sadness in my voice. I wanted to scream into the phone that she was just a slut and a whore that I never wanted to see again. I had to let her know that we had a chance to be together again. Oh, baby, please let me explain that it meant nothing and he meant nothing. You mean everything to me. You are my life, my reason for living. Please, oh God, forgive me. She burst into tears. I waited a few minutes and then I said, Baby, I just don't know. I loved you, but you broke my heart. I don't think we can fix it. No, baby, we can fix it. And we'll have an even stronger love, an even stronger bond between us if we can get through this. Please, baby. Can you at least wait until I get home so we can talk? I could hear the desperation in her voice. I don't know. When are you coming back? Well, there's one problem. I don't have a passport or a plane ticket. My sister is transferring money to me right now since all my credit cards were stolen. By the way, please call the credit card companies and ask them to cancel my cards immediately. Amazing how she went from pleading to take her back to asking them to cancel her credit cards. What a piece of work. Okay, I'll do it right now. So you don't know when you'll be home? In a few days, I think. I talked to the US consulate and they're going to make me a new passport. Okay, call me when you're getting ready to leave, okay? I will. Stu? Yeah. I love you. I'll see you when you get home. I hung up. So she wouldn't be back for a few more days. Great, I thought. That would give me enough time to make sure all the home improvement stuff was done and I could do a few things to help me start my new life without her. The next day, Frank called to see how I was doing and invited me over for dinner. I accepted since I hadn't had a home-cooked meal in over a week. I was living on pizza and Chinese food, and after I finished talking to Frank, I assured him that I wasn't going to do anything rash. Then Shannon called. Hey babe, I just found out I'm getting a new passport in a couple days. Now all I need is a plane ticket home. I'll be able to fly in a few days, and if I catch an early flight, I'll be home sometime in the late afternoon. Will you meet me at the airport? I really want us to talk as soon as possible. That's not a good idea, Shannon. Have your sister pick you up and bring you home. We can talk when you get here. I just let her on. By the time she got home, I'd be at least 100 miles away from her. Okay, baby. I love you and I know that if you give me a chance, we'll get through this. Okay, Stu? Yeah, sure, we'll talk and then we'll see. I'm not promising anything. I was lying and so was she to me. Now I knew when she'd be home, and I had plenty of time to do a few more things to cover my tracks when I left town. First, I sold my truck that I drove to work and bought another truck, used and in good condition, but registered it in a friend's name. Second, I had to inform the guys who worked for me that I was going out of business because of my impending divorce. I apologized for warning them about it, but I couldn't leave without telling them what happened and why. I then called an old friend from college who now lives in Colorado. When we graduated from college, he said I should come and do business with him there. He said that since there were both winter homes and summer homes there, we would have a year-round job. He was glad to hear from me, but was surprised at what had happened between me and Shannon, as he had known her when we were dating and had always thought we were perfect for each other. I asked if his college offer was still on the table or if he needed a really good handyman. He said that he had more work now that the laws had changed regarding marijuana, and that his workload had tripled in the last year, and I would be very happy to come and work for him. I asked if I could do it unofficially, as I wanted Shannon not to find out where I had gone and that she wouldn't get any money from me. Everything was set up, and all I had to do was leave. Shannon called me several times a day to let me know that she loved me and asked me to forgive her. She also let me know daily when she would be home and that I would be in better shape by the time she returned. The day came when she was due home. I packed up my new truck and cleared the house of all my belongings. Everything that was left belonged to Shannon or didn't care about me. I left very early in the morning as I wanted to get out of town without anyone noticing anything. I asked the neighbor across the street to do me a favor and write down when Shannon would be home. I told him I would call and let him know what time she would be home since I had a surprise for her. He had no idea what was going on and that she and I were having marital problems. He happily agreed and said he would expect my call the next day. Everything was ready to leave town and head south to a new life without Shannon. It would take me at least 2 days of driving to get to my friend's house, and by then Shannon would be home. As I drove, I felt less angry and more calm than I had in the past week. Ever since I'd seen Shannon and Anthony together at the pool, I'd felt like my life had been flushed down the toilet, and now I was starting to pull myself out of that cesspool of despair. Around noon, Shannon called and said she would be home tomorrow, around 4 in the afternoon. She asked again if I'd pick her up at the airport, but I said I had some things to do and that I'd be home after her. She could just let me in when she arrived. I then called my neighbor and asked him to be on standby with a video camera to film the surprise I had in store for my wife. The next day I was in Colorado and only an hour away from my friend's house when I got a call from Shannon. The house, it just collapsed, probably because of the snow. I had just put the key in the door and turned it when I heard a huge crack and the roof fell in. "Oh my God, our house is gone," she cried. "Shannon, don't worry. I'm sure your parents are still waiting for you in your room. As for me, I've already made other arrangements," I said cheerfully. "What are you talking about? Our house is gone. How can you be so happy about that?" Now she was starting to get angry. Good. My remodeling went exactly as I planned. I rigged the house to collapse in on itself when she opened the door. I installed temporary braces in the basement and then cut all the posts in the floor with a chainsaw. The lock on the front door was wired to a switch that turned on a winch I bought at a pawn shop for a very cheap price. Then, with a pulley and ropes attached to temporary braces, she turned the key, turned on the winch, and our house collapsed. You see, dear, our house didn't just collapse on its own because of the snow, but I had a hand in it. You see, I did to our house what you did to our marriage. Good luck finding a new place to live. As for me, I'm almost to my new home. At that point, I left her and called my neighbor. "Stu, you won't believe what just happened. Your house just collapsed. It probably couldn't handle that much snow, but I don't think there was much. At least not enough to do that much damage. I videotaped the whole thing, and thankfully your wife is okay. She was trying to open the door when it happened, and then bang, and she just fell on top of herself." He was so excited. I asked him to email me the video when he had a chance and wanted to keep a copy of it. After talking to him, I disconnected my phone and continued on my way to my new life. Epilogue. It's been almost 3 years now, and I've settled into a comfortable life here in Colorado. I keep in touch with a few friends in Minnesota and keep up with what's going on. I didn't want to contact family members directly as I was sure they would let Shannon know where I was living. It seems Shannon got her wish and was pregnant with Anthony's baby. For a while, she told everyone that he was mine, and I couldn't be the father and would run away like a coward. Even my mother believed her because she wanted a grandchild. I contacted a friend who in turn contacted my brother and told him to have Shannon do a DNA test on the baby and my brother. If I was a distant relative, I would have a close match with my brother. If I wasn't a distant relative, there would be no match. Like an idiot, she agreed. The results came back and my mother kicked her out of the house, yelling at her to never show up on the doorstep with this child of hers. As for Anthony, it seems he was badly hurt by those two guys at the resort and was in the hospital for over a week before he could get home. When he finally made it home, there were several other gentlemen, or should I say ex-husbands, waiting for him to add what those two didn't add. He has since left town for parts unknown, but rumor has it that he can no longer do so. Looks like his days as a player are over. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed. Subscribe to my channel and watch for the next video.